Reverend Katie. I'll start over. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Reverend Katie Zay. I'm the CEO of the Religious Community for Reproductive Choice, or RCRC, and we're so excited for this training with the Abortion Positivity Project as part of our Compassionate Care training series. So one of our main goals at RCRC is to reduce stigma and shame around abortion and our reproductive lives in general. And so one of the ways that we can do that is by being mindful of the way that we talk about abortion. And in my own work and writing, I've spoken of abortion as a blessing for so many people and a moral good for our society. And so I'm so excited to join all of you today in learning from our teacher today, Sophie Neer. A little bit about Sophie. She is the co-founder and CEO of the Abortion Positivity Project. She is the former executive director of Eleanor's Legacy, as well as the former finance director for New York State Attorney General Letitia James. She is the founder of the Vaccine Vigilantes and a veteran of the campaigns of many prominent women elected officials, for which she has received much recognition. And she is so proud to support abortion. So, Sophie, welcome to RCRC, and thank you so much for doing this training with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I am so excited to be here with everyone. Should I share my screen and just jump off?
Let's do it.
All right. Give me a second to manage technology. Share. All right. Can everyone see a slide that just says embracing abortion positivity with our logo and no other notes or anything like that? Perfect. All right. I'm just going to make sure that I can also see the chat, but forgive me if you're putting something in the chat while I'm presenting. I get in like a flow state and I can't read two things at once. So feel free to chat and I promise I will read through and get to them. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, for spending your Tuesday afternoon with us. I'm really, really grateful for your time and your interest and your passion for abortion, reproductive justice, and destigmatization. So as Reverend Katie said, my name is Sophie Neer. I'm CEO and co-founder of Abortion Positivity Project. I'm going to talk a little bit more about our work formally, but we work to destigmatize abortion, shift the national abortion narrative away from one controlled by anti-abortion extremists. And we do this by promoting a framework that we call abortion positivity. So we'll start at the very beginning. I think that makes the most sense to start. Abortion positivity is a framework of understanding abortion without any stigma or judgment. Abortion positivity centers the positive impact of abortion and recognizes abortion as a social good. So what abortion positivity is not is, first of all, just speaking about abortion positively. It is also not about judging individuals' emotions about their personal experiences with abortion or policing private conversations with trusted care providers. What we are talking about today is not the fallacy that every abortion experience is a positive one, because we know that that's not true. What we are talking about today is how we, as advocates who want to create a world where abortion is safe, legal, affordable, accessible, and stigma-free, can work towards that goal by contributing positively and in an intentionally destigmatizing way to the societal conversation around abortion, to the national abortion narrative. So I'm going to kick off with Abortion 101. And before we do, I think that Melanie was going to launch a little bit of a poll. And I'd love to just get a sense of, where do you see yourself at this moment? How comfortable are you talking about abortion? And hopefully that rating will go up over the next hour. So there is absolutely no wrong answer. But on a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable do you feel talking about abortion? How do I see the results?
Oh, I guess I can share the results at the end.
Great, perfect.
Okay.
Amazing, great. some 3s, some 4s, some 5s. That's fantastic. As I said, there are no wrong answers. If you feel a little bit comfortable and not all the way comfortable talking about abortion, then by the end of this seminar, I'm hopeful that you'll be at a 4 or a 5 and you'll feel empowered and educated. We are not here to preach to the choir. As religious and church-going folk, I know all about preaching to the choir. So we are here to really talk in a new way, a different way that maybe you haven't heard of or understood before. So no worries if you aren't coming in at a 5. That's perfectly fine. Okay. So let's talk about abortion 101. And I'll share a story, which is there's a congresswoman, a former congresswoman now, named Congresswoman Maloney. And she, during her time in Congress, really understood herself and positioned herself as like the leading feminist in Congress. She was a huge advocate for women's equality in all of its ways and a huge advocate for abortion access. And she, when she was running for re-election, went to a endorsement interview with the New York Times, and they asked her, what is abortion medication and how does it work? And she did not know the answer. And that is the inspiration for why I open our trainings with this "what is abortion" slide. It's not because it's because this information really is not obvious. And a lot of people who are talking very loudly about abortion and a lot of people who are making laws about abortion genuinely and fundamentally do not know what it is. So this may feel redundant for you and it may feel like some new information. Either way, I think it's important to start here as a sort of grounding of our conversation. Now I need to go faster. So what is abortion? Abortion is the intentional termination of a pregnancy. On the opposite side of the very same coin, an unintentional termination of a pregnancy is referred to commonly as a miscarriage and medically as a spontaneous abortion. Fundamentally and functionally, miscarriage and abortion are very much the same thing. And you cannot legislate or really functionally discuss one without the other. So there's 2 types of abortion that we're going to talk about today. Procedure abortion and medication abortion. I'll make a note that you'll often hear this phrase surgical abortion, and abortion is not medically a surgery. It is a procedure, which is why we use the word procedure. Abortion procedures happen in person in a clinic or medical facility, can be performed at any stage of pregnancy. A D&C is a type of abortion procedure, and you will very, very often hear this phrase used in conjunction with people sharing a story about their miscarriage. They'll say, I had a miscarriage and I had to have a D&C. A D&C is an abortion. Kylie Kelsey posted something just yesterday that I saw about how she had a D&C, and that is an abortion in 100% of cases. Medication abortion can be prescribed in person or over the mail and is available up to 10 to 12 weeks. The gold standard for medication abortion is you swallow 1 pill of mifepristone and then 24 to 48 hours later, dissolve 4 pills of misoprostol either in your cheeks or intravaginally. And this causes the cramping and bleeding that expels the pregnancy from the body while the mifepristone stops the pregnancy from developing. 73% of Americans do not know the difference between these 3 reproductive health and pregnancy care medications. So I think it's important to mention birth control, of course, is used proactively to prevent pregnancy. Emergency contraception is used after a sexual encounter to prevent pregnancy, and abortion medication is used to terminate a pregnancy once the patient is already pregnant. And every pregnancy has the opportunity to become life-threatening. I recently was at an event where an abortion provider was speaking, and she said a quote that will always stick with me, which was, "It is always safe. Abortion is always safer than continuing a pregnancy." I thought that was a fascinating quote. Pregnancy is extremely dangerous, and there are unfortunately, very frequently health complications in pregnancy. And because of this, it is not safe to be pregnant without access to abortion. That is a sort of fundamental fact that it's really important to understand that that it is unsafe to be pregnant without access to abortion. So let's talk about some abortion history. And of course, abortion has always existed everywhere. But for America's first century, abortion was not banned in a single US state. And that's because before the Civil War, there was a very steep separation between the sort of traditional medical system, which was entirely controlled by men, and the pregnancy care and reproductive health care system, which was controlled by these unlicensed midwives, because there wasn't a licensing procedure at that time. So in 1860, a coalition of male doctors decided that they wanted to change that. They wanted to integrate reproductive health care and pregnancy care into the formal medical structure. And this is 1860. So we're not talking about a particularly sophisticated medical structure on its face. However, this coalition of male doctors went state to state and encouraged governments to outlaw abortion, which had never previously been regulated. And over 40 years, by 1910, they were effective in creating an abortion ban in every single state individually. 20 years later, in 1930, a study was conducted that found that the criminalization of abortion resulted in the death of 2,700 women in the year 1930 alone. And that really laid the groundwork for Roe v. Wade, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, which legalized abortion nationwide. I'll also add that Roe was decided 7-2 by mostly Republican appointed justices and was endorsed by the Southern Baptist Convention at that time. In 1976, we saw a big shift with the Hyde Amendment. Joseph Hyde was a senator who believed that if he could not make abortion illegal because of Roe v. Wade, which was at the time on the books, then he would just make abortion really difficult to access. If I can't make it illegal, I will make it inaccessible. And that ushered in this new era of what we call TRAP laws, targeted restrictions of abortion providers, TRAP, which targeted the accessibility of abortion, made abortion legal to access, but impossible to actually get. And this is my favorite horrifying statistic about this era is in the state of Missouri, in 1982, there were 29 abortion clinics in the state of Missouri. By 1992, 10 years later, we went from 29 to 12 abortion clinics. And in 2014, which is nearly a decade before the Dobbs decision, there was only one abortion clinic remaining in Missouri. So you can really see the trajectory of how that happened. And then in 2022, we saw the Dobbs decision, which removed the federal mandate to legal abortion. So states can now choose to restrict, ban, or criminalize abortion by their own bad discretion. And something that I always like to point out, because it is, I think, really getting lost in the national abortion conversation at this time, is that the United States has never, ever, ever had any kind of national abortion ban of any sort. So this is what we are looking at as the current state of abortion accessibility, legality, et cetera, in the United States. And this is a map from the Guttmacher Institute. If you are interested in any sort of abortion accessibility statistics, they are just the best. And I highly encourage you to check them out. So I'm going to wrap up this section of our training, and then I'll take if there's any questions on this. I'll let you read this, and I can also send out this slide deck afterwards. But the Dobbs decision has created this severe overburdening of the available abortion access infrastructure in access states, and a just horror show of inequality and pain and suffering in abortion hostile states. And I'll let you have a minute with this. Are there any questions about our Abortion 101 section?
And just to remind folks, if you, or actually Sophie, if folks want to ask you a question on camera, Mel can make them panelist. So if you have a question, please put it in the chat and let me know if you'd like to ask it on camera.
I'm perusing the chat just to see. Hi, Devin. Yeah. Do you have a reputable place that we can find a historical timeline of events like these? Yes. So Guttmacher and Planned Parenthood both have great. Oh. Sorry, both have great a sort of abortion history. I obviously abridged it significantly because we only have the time that we have. But yes, there are amazing resources on abortion history through Planned Parenthood and through Guttmacher. Oh no!
Maybe folks aren't seeing your slides as you see them on your screen. They're not seeing.
Do you see them, Katie?
I don't. The slide that I see is every pregnancy has the opportunity to become life-threatening.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
Oh, was that it? It's all a map.
Do you see history now?
Yes.
Do you see a map?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't change anything, so I don't know why it wasn't doing that. Do folks see?
We'll make sure that everyone gets the recording and the slides after, right, Sophie? You can share the slide deck.
Absolutely. Okay. I'm so sorry about that. I don't know why that would be. Does everyone see history right now?
Yeah. Yep, we're good.
Okay.
I'll try to flag it if that happens again.
Okay, please do. I'm very sorry about that. I don't know why that would be. Okay. So we are an organization that works to destigmatize abortion, specifically among people who self-identify as quote unquote pro-choice. We are not interested in, we're going to talk about why very soon, but we do not concern ourselves with turning people who are vehemently anti-abortion into people who support abortion, because we don't need to. We are really focused on making sure that people who support abortion, who have grown up in and all of us lived our entire lives in a sort of cultural climate where abortion stigma is the norm and the standard, that we can unpack that and make changes to our own movement in a way that furthers our goals rather than undermines them. And the situation that we are in, that I just talked about, which I'm sorry you couldn't see, about our post-Dobbs landscape and all of the ground that we have unfortunately lost since 1973. We are in this position in large part, unfortunately, because we, as the quote-unquote pro-choice movement, have not launched a successful counterattack. In so many ways, we are doing our opponents' work for them by perpetuating abortion stigma and creating and allowing for a national abortion climate that is like setting the stage and creating a, excuse the pun, fertile ground for anti-abortion extremism to flourish, which currently it is. So we're going to talk in the next section of this training about abortion stigma and what it is. So abortion stigma is the latent implication that abortion is secretly bad, shameful, or immoral. And the thing to understand within this training is that abortion stigma has been perpetuated for centuries by both supporters and opponents of abortion access. If you take one thing away from this specific section of this training, it is that the sort of national idea that anti-abortion people, colloquially referred to as Republicans, are the problem, and quote unquote pro-choice people, colloquially referred to as Democrats, are the solution. This idea does not play out in reality because quote unquote pro-choice people are doing so much harm by perpetuating abortion stigma. And abortion stigma, among people who identify as quote unquote pro-choice, abortion stigma often manifests as the use of euphemisms, qualifiers, avoiding the word abortion, passing judgment at the circumstances under which someone decided to have an abortion, or using abortion negative language. And we're going to talk about what that is more specifically. And as I said, abortion stigma causes tremendous harm to patients and providers by creating a hostile and unsafe environment for care. Very importantly, empowering abortion restrictions and bans that put lives and destinies at risk, and undermining medical and personal expertise. We also know that the way that the quote unquote pro-choice movement has been operating doesn't work, because we are in the worst position for abortion access that we have been in 5 decades. And unfortunately, the pro-choice movement has leaned heavily historically into stigmatizing an abortion narrative language. And we see it at APP, we see it as our responsibility to kind of unpack that language. Where is it coming from? Is it values aligned? And shift it in a way that supports rather than undermines our cause and our goals. So we have all grown up internalizing this abortion stigma. And the first step to embracing abortion positivity, which is the goal of this training, is to unlearn that abortion negativity that we're all accustomed to. And this is a very important strategic note, I think, which is that suggesting something is secretly bad is the worst way to get someone to support it. And this goes for anything, right? If I said, I have this friend and like she's like kind of bad, and we apologize for her, and we feel uncomfortable supporting her, but you should be friends with her, right? Obviously, strategically speaking, that is not an effective way to get someone to do or support anything. So using an abortion positive frame and lens maximizes the impact and effectiveness of abortion advocacy, as well as creating a safe environment for abortion patients and providers.
Sophie, I think, are you still advancing slides? Sorry,
I am.
Okay.
Do you see what have you been told are the alternatives to abortion?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see that?
We did not.
Huh. Okay.
I'll just keep maybe checking in.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, not at all. Should I just unshare and reshare my screen and see if that changes anything?
Sure, we can try that.
I don't know why it would, but I also don't know why it's not doing it properly now. All right. Hopefully that will help.
And maybe if you say like next slide or something, I'll know.
Okay. Great.
I can let you know. Okay.
Right, okay. So next slide. So I'd love to hear you put some things in the chat. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Barb, that my slides are not updating. Hopefully it'll fix it. This is a question for you all. What have you been told? What is the sort of national media or the cultural abortion conversation presenting as the alternative to abortion? Throw them in the chat. There's 3 big ones that I usually hear. Yes, adoption. That is definitely the #1 most common. I want to give people a second, but also in the interest of time, maybe I'll push forward, which is that abstinence. Yes. Yep. Well, we're going to talk about abortion is not good, but necessary quite a bit. Yep. Yeah. So Generally speaking, the things that I hear presented by the sort of national abortion conversation as the alternative to abortion, most of which were said in the chat, are adoption, birth control, and abstinence. But in reality, the only alternative to abortion is forced birth. And that is because adoption is the alternative to parenting, right? Abstinence or birth control maybe are the alternative to becoming pregnant in the first place. But once you are pregnant, your options are to have the abortion that you want or be forced against your will into being pregnant or giving birth. And this is a really, really important reframe. And that, I'm sorry, I'm like trying to like both keep up with the chat and present. So maybe I'll just focus on presenting for a minute. This is a really important reframe because it shifts the whole national conversation, in my opinion, on its axis, right? So common pitfalls among people who self-identify as quote unquote pro-choice in perpetuating abortion stigma accidentally is, first of all, accidentally advocating for forced birth by implying that someone who wants an abortion should not be able to get one, judging the circumstances of other people's abortions, which are, of course, none of our business, suggesting that some abortions are more moral than other abortions, quote unquote, or villainizing abortion later in pregnancy. And that's one that I really, really want to focus on a little bit. Do you see a slide that says common pitfalls before I continue on? Great. Yes. Good. Okay, I'm glad. So I really want to talk about this for a very specific reason, which is that false, lurid, bad faith mischaracterization of the reality of abortion later in pregnancy really dominated the national abortion conversation during the 2024 election cycle. It became like the sort of dominating narrative. And it's designed to spread misinformation, distrust, and fear. It is in tremendous bad faith. And I like the word pitfall because it was a pitfall that quote unquote pro-choice candidates kept falling into over and over and over again. And it started, if you're watching the debates or if you're following the sort of the way that abortion was being covered in conjunction with the election coverage, it really started to feel like there were two sides and they were both debating that abortion and abortion later in pregnancy were bad. And it was tragic and heart-wrenching to watch. And because it made it clear, as I was saying earlier, that there is not a strong, active pro-abortion side within our national landscape, both politically and in the media. And I want to say two things about abortion later in pregnancy, and both of these things are true. And they're both true and they're both equally true. Thing one is that abortions after 21 weeks of gestation make up about 1% of abortions in America and are almost always used in the case of severe complications in wanted pregnancies. That's true. And thing two is that there is absolutely never a reason why someone should be forced to be pregnant or give birth against their will, no matter what. No pregnancy, no abortion, whether it was in the case of a wanted pregnancy or an unwanted pregnancy, is more or less moral. And we're going to talk about why that is very soon than any other. And both of those things are 100% true and need to be held in the conversation together. So let's talk about the way that abortion, we're going to go back to the way that abortion is discussed, euphemisms, avoidance, and qualifiers. So first of all, a note on avoidance: abortion is not a dirty word. There is no reason to not use the word abortion when abortion is what we mean. We do not need to distance ourselves from our support of abortion. And we do not need to avoid saying the word abortion. So euphemisms that are common are choice, of course, termination, reproductive rights or reproductive health, women's rights or women's health. And a note is I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with the phrases reproductive rights, reproductive health, reproductive justice, which is actually kind of a different thing. But if you are going to use the phrase reproductive rights or reproductive health, those are phrases that should be used when what you mean and what you are referring to is reproductive rights or reproductive health. When you are saying the phrases reproductive rights or reproductive health, how many times can I say that? And what you mean is abortion, that's when it becomes euphemistic. Does that make sense? And then for qualifiers, abortion access or abortion rights, again, fabulous things to say when those things are what you mean. When they become a qualifier is when you say, I don't support abortion, I support abortion access, or I don't support abortion, I support abortion rights. And a game I like to call with friends like these. These are some quotes that our dear friend, former President Joe Biden, said while he was the president and while he was the leader of the only quote unquote pro-choice political party in the country. He said, I'm a practicing Catholic. I am not big on abortion. Do you see this, by the way? Do you see with friends like these? No. Do you see it now? Okay. I figured out what the problem was, but I still don't know why it's the problem, but I figured out what the problem is. Okay. So, yes, he said, I'm a practicing Catholic. I'm not big on abortion, but guess what? Roe v. Wade got it right. He said, I'm a practicing Catholic. I don't want abortion on demand, but I thought Roe v. Wade was right. And then he said, we are not for late-term abortion. I thought it was particularly important to talk about these quotes in this training, although I will admit I talk about them in every training we do, because he is really creating here what I hope we all understand to be a fundamentally false equivalency that abortion is somehow against religious values or the values of religious people. I myself am a religious person. I am Jewish, and I was raised very religious. I still consider myself to be religious. And I know, and we're going to talk all about values alignment, but abortion is something that is not only values aligned for me, but perfectly and easily slots into my values that are heavily determined by my faith and my religion and my practice of my religion. And I know, or at least I hope, that that is true for many of the people on this call. The understanding that I'm a practicing Catholic and that harms my relationship to abortion as opposed to supports and informs my relationship to abortion in a positive and affirming way. The idea that that's presented as it being sort of obvious really breaks my heart because it is so far outside of my relationship with religion, and I know the relationship of so many others in other religious people. Also, other things I want to say about these quotes. First of all, just saying I'm not big on abortion is, of course, deeply stigmatizing, very judgmental, and unkind. And I don't want abortion on demand, I think is a great example of what I was saying in the pitfalls of accidentally advocating for forced birth, right? If you say, I don't want abortion on demand, that means that you think that some people who want an abortion should not be able to access that care and should instead be forced to be pregnant or give birth against their will. And that is not aligned with my values, religious or otherwise. And then, of course, we are not for late-term abortion. We just talked all about that. So as you can see here, but I think throughout the whole presentation, I hope at least, is the idea that anti-abortion leaders are the problem and quote unquote pro-choice leaders are the solution is clearly false. And people who think of themselves as being friends of abortion, supporters of abortion, or at least supporters of abortion access are unfortunately doing tremendous harm to the national abortion climate. And that has impacts on our legislative landscape. It has impacts on the experience of abortion patients and abortion providers. And it is misaligned with both our values and our goals. And we're going to talk about goals very explicitly in just a second. But what we are here to do is embrace abortion positivity so that we can actively and intentionally do our part to destigmatize abortion. That is the end of section 2. So if there are questions in the chat, I'm going to peek back at them. Can you see? Are you seeing my slides now? Okay, good. Again, I figured out what the problem was, but I don't know why that was the problem. I see abortion messaging. That's good. That is exactly what you should be seeing. Any questions before we move on? Great. Fabulous. I'm sorry, all. I'm trying to keep up with both the chat and my slides, and I'm sorry if I'm having a lag. All right, so let's go on to our abortion messaging section. So we always want to ground our abortion messaging and our abortion conversations in this goal. And our goal is that anyone who decides to have an abortion should be able to access care with no barriers or judgment. And we want to talk about abortion publicly in a way that furthers rather than undermines this goal. And sometimes I'll say something in this section and someone will say, well, but I feel that way. And if that's the case, first of all, I ask that you evaluate internally, why do I feel that way? Where did that feeling come from? Who is benefiting from that feeling? Is that feeling aligned with my values, or is it something that I sort of picked up from a stigmatizing national conversation and isn't in line with my goals and values? And that may be the case, but even if it is, what I will say is that you can feel any way you want, and I can never ever tell you what to feel. But I can tell you that when we are talking strategically about meeting this goal, there are things that are just fundamentally not helpful to say. So this is my favorite acronym, of course. We at the Abortion Positivity Project believe that abortion should be safe, accessible, legal, stigma-free, and affordable, i.e. SALSA. Now, I want to kick off the actual messaging portion of our training with grounding in the principles of abortion positivity. And when we talk about abortion at the national, or when we are contributing to the national abortion conversation, when we're talking about an abortion in the public space, these are the principles that guide my conversation and my advocacy and the way that I understand abortion and the way that I present my abortion support. I hope you see that. Did you not see SALSA? Now you'll see SALSA. Now you see principles. This is so annoying. I'm so sorry. Okay. So these are the principles of abortion positivity. As I was saying, these are the principles that guide my personal and our formal and official framework in our conversation and in our discourse. Thing number one, forced birth is evil. Preventing forced birth is a moral necessity. There is nothing morally ambiguous about preventing forced birth. Preventing forced birth is good in all cases. And that also means that no abortion is more or less moral than any other abortion, because all abortions happen in service of preventing the evil of forced birth. And that's sort of pillar number one. Pillar number two, Women get to determine their own life path. What women want for their own life matters fundamentally and unconditionally. For this reason, abortion never has to be justified. And this is really the only time in this presentation that I'm going to talk about patriarchy, but I am going to talk about patriarchy because the societal structure of patriarchy really thrives when women are restricted, limited, and devalued. And I want to say, again, two things that are going to hold and be equally true. The first is, and I do want to point out that people of all genders have abortions. Trans men have abortions. Non-binary people have abortions. People, not only cisgendered women, have abortions. That is 100% true, and it's really important to mention. At the very same time, and going hand in hand, and in no way contradictory, in my view, is that abortion restriction is fundamentally designed to limit, to oppress, limit the freedom, limit the opportunity for women specifically. So in that way, abortion restriction and abortion ban is a tool of patriarchy. And that's really important. I also think that under patriarchy, there is so much stigma about women doing anything just because they want to. There is so much stigma around women making choices just because it's the thing they want and it's not in service of a man or having children. There is so much stigma about that. And it is fundamentally abortion positive to understand that what women specifically want from their/our own lives absolutely matters. And then the last pillar, abortion is good for society. If abortion was more accessible, society would be better. If abortion was more accessible, society would be more equitable, more just, more fair, more prosperous. And if abortion was more accessible, it would be a reflection of a more equitable, more fair, more just, better society. So, abortion has the worst PR of all time. The national media and the national abortion conversation would have you believe that 50% of Americans support abortion and 50% of Americans vehemently oppose abortion. And this could not be further from the truth. Not only do nearly 90% of Americans support abortion in at least some cases, but support for abortion, the more abortion is restricted, the more support for abortion rises. And I do not say this because we are not bandwagon abortion fans, of course. I always say, if abortion has 1 billion fans, I'm one. If abortion has 1 fan, it's me. And if abortion has 0 fans, I'm dead. We would support abortion very proudly, even if it was not popular. But when we're talking about messaging, when we hear abortion talked about from this place of apology and from this real narrative low ground, it makes me sad because it is so not reflective of where our society actually is. We have the high ground on abortion popularity. We are taking this high ground and we are throwing it to trash. But we do have this high ground. Abortion is overwhelmingly popular. So let's talk about narrative control, because I keep saying this, that like language stigmatizes abortion, gives narrative control to anti-abortion extremists. But what does that even mean? So narrative control is about setting the terms of the national abortion discourse. So when we talk about abortion, what are we actually talking about? And that's really true of anything, right? We could have, let's talk about the conversation about bananas, right? We could be having a conversation about how much we love bananas, or we could be having a debate about how much we love bananas, or we could be having a debate or a conversation about how bananas are horrible. And both of these conversations exist within the national banana discourse. But one of these is a sort of stigmatizing, and one of these is an intentionally destigmatizing way to talk about bananas, right? I don't know why I picked bananas this time. When our rhetoric plays into anti-abortion narratives, we are doing their work for them. And even though abortion is overwhelmingly popular, as just discussed, we really are losing this narrative war. The way that abortion is talked about publicly and in the public sphere, in the political sphere, in the news, is so fundamentally anti-abortion. There is a sort of implicit understanding, i.e., stigma, that abortion is this bad or terrible thing, and that even supporters of abortion should be just sort of understanding this inherently and implicitly and perpetuating it, which, in fairness, historically, we have been. And I think a great example of this is look at the way that abortion favorability is polled, right? And what if, when we were doing an abortion favorability poll, what if the pollsters, who are supposedly, neutral, independent pollsters, what if instead of asking, should abortion be legal after 24 weeks or whatever number of weeks it should be, they should ask, should the government be forcing people to be pregnant or give birth, right? Functionally, those are the same thing with the same outcome. The way it is framed in the national abortion conversation, very, very different and very, very impactful. Also, even the fact that abortion favorability is polled at all is a sort of anti-abortion narrative control mechanism. I always say, this is the example that I always give. I had sinus surgery about 2 years ago. I will say this was a very emotionally difficult and painful decision for me to have the sinus surgery. And it was a horrible experience. And at no point during my sinus surgery journey was a national poll conducted, should Sophie have sinus surgery? That was never discussed. And the way that abortion is discussed is so singular in that way. And yes, anti-abortion extremists use the word abortion 4 times more than quote unquote pro-choice advocates do, meaning that they have been able to stigmatize abortion so deeply that even supporters feel awkward or ashamed talking about it. So this is a real oversimplification of the way that abortion positivity shifts the narrative. But I think that sometimes an oversimplification is helpful in understanding. So for decades, we have been countering the attack that abortion is bad with the idea that abortion is not bad. And if we are debating whether abortion is bad, the anti-abortion extremist minority is controlling the narrative. So abortion positivity is about taking back the narrative and shifting the terms of discourse to abortion is good. Again, tremendous oversimplification. Bad and good are about as oversimplified as descriptors as we could possibly come up with. But I think that really paints the picture as to where is the conversation? How are we as supporters of abortion contributing to keeping the conversation where it is? And how can we move it? So under the umbrella of quote unquote pro-choice statements, we can have abortion negative statements and sentiments that imply that abortion is bad, abortion neutral statements that imply that abortion is not bad, and then abortion positive statements, which imply that abortion is good, which is, of course, it is because of the pillars of abortion positivity. So historically, we have been very stuck in this place. And I actually saw earlier in the chat one of the abortion negative statements that I have listed out here already said. So please feel free to type in some more ideas if you have them. But I did see one already, which is when Claire posted, abortion is not good, but sometimes necessary. And that's a great example that Claire provided, of a pro-choice but abortion negative sentiment. So chat away, type all you want, and I will see them when they come up, or I hope. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to press forward. Thank you so much. Abortion should be safe, legal, and rare. I see in the chat. And yes, of course. So safe, legal, and rare, you are likely familiar with, is a sentiment that was sort of first expressed by President Bill Clinton and then adopted as the official slogan of Planned Parenthood for decades. Of course, to imply that abortion should be rare is implying that there is something inherently and fundamentally wrong with it. Other examples are other people should be able to do what they want, but I would never choose to have an abortion. This is a really interesting sentiment to me for two reasons. One, because if I said to you, you can wear whatever you want, but I would never wear that. We understand that to be insulting at the very least, and unsupportive, right? And yet people say this about abortion. And that's reason number one that I find this sentiment to be so concerning. And reason number two is because this is a situation that I like to refer to as quote unquote abortion fan fiction. And that is when someone sort of decides what circumstances that people have abortions in is sort of what abortion is. And in reality, there are as many circumstances that people have abortions in as there are abortions. And maybe it's true that if you were a financially stable adult and you were healthy, that you would not choose to have an abortion. Maybe that's true, maybe. But if you were going to die if you did not have an abortion, maybe you would have an abortion. If you were having a miscarriage and your doctor said you needed a DNC, again, that is an abortion. Maybe in that case, you would have an abortion. If you were 10 years old and you had been impregnated through incest, which unfortunately does in fact happen, and your options were to have an abortion or to maybe crack your 10-year-old pelvis in childbirth, maybe you would have an abortion. So the idea of someone saying, I would never choose to have an abortion, you are creating a circumstance in your head that you wouldn't choose to have an abortion in, and then assigning that circumstance to all abortion, when in reality, as I just said, abortion is the circumstances under which people have abortions is absolutely not one single thing. Yeah, exactly. Yes, abortion is never an easy decision, or very similarly, abortion is so sad or tragic, or no one would ever happily choose to have an abortion. These are sentiments that really assign feelings to people in a way that I feel is deeply inappropriate. I don't think it is appropriate to tell someone else how they should or do feel about their own decisions and their own circumstance. People have many emotions that they report out. Abortion also is a way that many people get out of a situation that is very dangerous for them to be in, or that they just fundamentally don't want to be in. And in that way, abortion is liberating to them. So people have a wide variety of emotional responses around their own abortion, and we don't need to assign some sort of universal negativity, both because it's stigmatizing and also because it is fundamentally untrue. We know that the vast majority of abortion patients report feeling relief from their abortions. So for some abortion neutral statements, there's so many of these, so I just have a sort of random smattering, but also feel free to put any more in the chat. Abortion neutral statements like people will have abortions even if abortion is not legal. Abortion should be safe and legal. I consider that to be like very much the bare minimum. Abortion is medical care. That is so true. But as I was just saying before, abortion is not treated in the national conversation as medical care. Abortion is really singled out in a way that no other normal and common medical procedure is. And that's something really to keep in mind when talking about, abortion is health care or abortion is medical care. I think that it should be so abundantly obvious that abortion is medical care or abortion is health care. That is just that's just like literally a fact. That's, to me, that's like saying the sky is blue. And yet the way these things are talked about, it's so singled out, it's so siloed in such an odd and stigmatized way. Or I support the right to choose, very bare minimum in its sentiment. Again, abortion positive statements, there are about a million. So here's just an essentially random smattering of them that I like to say very frequently. Abortion is freedom. I am so proud to support abortion. Abortion must be safe, legal, affordable, accessible, stigma-free, all the salsa things. I am pro-abortion. All of these are abortion positive sentiments. And of course, here at the Abortion Positivity Project, we like to always keep it abortion positive. All right, so I actually am almost done, I promise. I'm going to wrap up with just a few slides that are about sort of specific words and phrases that are common among the national abortion discourse. And the first one is pro-choice, and the other one is this word that I'll only say once, which is pro-life. Do you see the reframing the national conversation slide? Great. So the first one is we never, ever, 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 ever need to say that again, this thing. We never need to say it again. The people that proclaim themselves to be that do nothing but create policies that put people's lives, health, and destinies in peril. So it's really important that we not allow anti-abortion extremists to control the narrative by parroting their talking points, even if it is to criticize or disagree, right? That phrase is a euphemism in itself. And when we use that phrase, we are allowing them to sort of name themselves something that sounds positive, but is inherently and fundamentally false to their actual actions and impact. So instead of using a euphemism, if we want to talk about them accurately, we would say they are anti-abortion or they are pro-forced birth. And of course, we can do so much better than the moniker of quote unquote pro-choice. Choice is a euphemism and abortion is a positive thing. And we are proud to support it by name. The etymology of the phrase quote unquote pro-choice was intentionally designed to distance us from abortion. And to distance from abortion is to imply that there's something wrong with it, that we need to be distanced from it. The framework of being pro-choice leaves space for all of the harmful abortion negativity that we just talked about, right? We just gave examples of so many harmful statements and harmful sentiments that are fundamentally and do fall under that umbrella of pro-choice. So we know that pro-choice is not enough and we can do so much better. Of course, there is no true choice without abortion access. And also, quote unquote, pro-choice, from my perspective, is the moniker of an already failed movement, right? If we wanted to root for a team that had already lost, we would root for the Spurs. Knicks in 5. So instead, we say pro-abortion, very proudly. And I'm very proudly pro-abortion. I think it is so easy to be proudly pro-abortion because when we are rooting our understanding of abortion and the impacts of abortion in the pillars of abortion positivity that we just talked about, it is so easy to understand ourselves as pro-abortion people. So I'm almost done, I promise. And I'm gonna just sort of end on just some sort of messaging, some messaging don'ts, and then spoiler alert, I'm gonna hit you with some messaging do's. So for our messaging don'ts, first of all, these might sound obvious, but you'd be surprised. Do not disparage abortion. Do not use euphemisms to avoid the word abortion. Do not be ashamed or apologetic of your own pro-abortion position. Do not use stigmatizing language or repeat your opposition's talking points. Do not allow anti-abortion narratives to control the conversation. I feel like we talked so much about that. Do not accept the premise of a bad faith question. A bad faith question is a question like, but do you think that someone should be able to have an abortion halfway through giving birth? That's a bad faith question. That is not a question that is being asked with a sort of curiosity or educational outlook. That is a question that is being asked in bad faith. Do not evaluate the validity or reasoning of other people's abortions. Do not use people's suffering in banned states as political pawns. And do not attack people trying to learn. If a question is being asked for a genuinely curious and educational reason, engage with that conversation in a supportive and positive way. And we're going to close with our messaging do's. And I'm going to, of course, start with the number one messaging do is do ground your abortion messaging and your abortion conversation in the principles of abortion positivity. Use the word abortion. Talk about your support of abortion proudly. Be knowledgeable. Lean into conversations about abortion. Call out bad faith arguments or arguments based in anti-abortion narratives when you do hear them. Talk about abortion to men and express how abortion access aligns with your values. As religious people, this is what I was saying before, it is so infuriating to me that there is this sort of idea within the national abortion conversation that people who are against abortion have what they self-describe to be quote unquote family values, and what abortion supportive people has is a sort of lack of values. And we know that that could not be further from the truth. As abortion supporters and as religious people, either way, abortion supporters who are or are not religious are people of values, people who have values. We value life, health, safety. We value freedom. We value the ability to determine your own destiny. We value women. We value marginalized people and communities of color. There are so many ways that our abortion advocacy and our support of abortion is values rooted and values aligned. And that's what I would love to kick off our conversation with. How does abortion align with your values? Why are you abortion positive? And of course, if you have any questions, now's the time to hit me with them. Thank you so much. And I'm so sorry for any tech issues that we had.
No worries. Thank you, Sophie. This was really engaging. I love the examples that you brought, and just making the parallels really solidified for me why this is so important in a different kind of way. There's one question in the chat I just thought you might want to respond to. Chris asked,
Yeah.
What do you mean by do not use people suffering in bad states as political pawns?
Oh, yeah, in banned states. Yes.
Banned.
Yes.
It is bad, but yes, banned.
Banned, yes.
Here's what they meant.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I actually added that during the 2024 presidential election. No worries, Chris. Because I kept hearing abortion supportive people say, like, well, actually, like, maybe the Dobbs decision is a good thing. Like, maybe the fact that like people are like bleeding out in hospital parking lots in Texas and Louisiana and Georgia is a good thing because it will like open people's eyes so that they'll vote with me. And that is not appropriate. That is not an appropriate way to understand other people's suffering. And that is what I mean by that. Is that the idea that people suffering under abortion bans is good politically for anyone is a very sad and scary sentiment. Yeah, so that's what it means. Yes, we do not need to witness the suffering of others to understand the suffering of others. I love that. Yes, that is a great point and a great sentiment. Any other questions? Yeah, please.
I was just thinking, when you encounter somebody, when you're talking about your work, and maybe they're using some of that pro-choice language that you're advocating that we not use, do you use that as an opportunity to talk about why you speak about it? Or are you just modeling what you do? Or like, how do you engage in that sort of one-on-one or even like a small group when you encounter some of the unintentionally harmful language?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. I will say it's a little bit context dependent, and I always like tell all of our training attendees that like I trust you implicitly to know within the context of a situation like what the best way to engage on it is given the person. Definitely, I always model it. There is nothing that anyone could say to me that would that I would sort of code switch to abortion stigmatizing language for. I always keep everything that I say, I always keep rooted in those principles of abortion positivity and in being fundamentally and proudly pro-abortion. If someone seems interested in engaging with the way that I talk, I absolutely engage them. And I use it as a sort of first of all, I use it as an educational way, and I always use sort of I statements to say, well, I talk about abortion this way because it aligns with my values in this way. I talk about abortion in this way because Yes, Melanie. I talk about abortion in this way because I care about destigmatizing abortion actively intentionally, right? So that's like an important frame that I use. The only time that I just do not engage with someone's, more quote unquote pro-choice language is if I am actively asking them for something. If I am in Albany or if I am, in DC, or if I am trying to like actively lobby for a piece of legislation that can expand abortion access, or protect abortion providers, seekers, and facilitators, or, which is what we do in our legislative work, which I don't talk about in our trainings, but that is what we do. Then I say, I am here with one goal and one goal only, and that is to get this person to support this bill, and I'm keeping this conversation on that. My language will always reflect abortion positivity, and the way that I talk about abortion will always stay consistent. But if I do not want to derail meetings that are about legislation by talking too much about police, feeling like someone feeling like they're having their messaging policed. And that's another thing. I never want someone to feel policed. I want someone to feel encouraged. I want someone to feel like their mind is being opened, not like they're being sort of shamed or talked down to. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. We've got now, as we get to the end, we've got several. There's a clarification around the state ban. If you want to address that, are there do we have to talk about those instances? I'm guessing you're going to say yes.
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely, for sure. The only reason I'm not saying that we shouldn't talk about them. I'm just saying we shouldn't talk about them as if they are a sort of positive thing because they will have a political impact.
Right.
Absolutely talk about them 100%.
And then I think you saw this repeating the values.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually I'll just, as if this has been going well, I'll just share my screen again and I'll pull it back up. There we go. So, the values and the principles of abortion positivity: forced birth is evil, and preventing forced birth is a moral necessity. Excuse me. Women get to determine their own life path, and what women want for their life matters fundamentally and unconditionally. So abortion never needs to be justified, and abortion is good for society. If abortion was more accessible, society would be better.
Thank you. And then there was another question that we can maybe tag team. Is opposition to abortion most by Christian Americans? What about Muslims, Jews, and other cultures? I guess my first response to that is, when we talk about how we got here politically, it's really white Christian nationalism. I wouldn't even say it's a particular religious group, but the political machine of white Christian nationalism and its ideology that co-opts Christian language when it's really about patriarchy, power over and against those not deemed to be true Americans. I would say that's the dominant political force that's behind the anti-abortion movement. They are in many ways one and the same, but white Christian nationalism is a much broader political ideology than just anti-abortion. But that, I believe, was kind of that was their big organizing strategy from the very beginning of that movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add two things. One is on your point of an organizing strategy. What we have seen time and time again, which I just touched on very, very briefly in our history, but can send out more resources about, is that we have seen throughout history sort of Christian voters be sort of like whipped up around abortion issues in order to be deployed against for other political gains, usually either racism or financial gains for billionaires, right? So we will see a huge shift. As I said, in 1973, when Roe v. Wade passed, the Southern Baptist Convention, like the Christian movement, not the Catholics necessarily mostly, but like mainstream Christianity was supportive of Roe v. Wade. After Roe v. Wade, there was a sort of intentional push among like religious Christians to sort of get Christian voters angry about abortion so that they could also pass their racist policies and their policies that make wealthy people wealthier, and harm everyone else. So
Right.
that's
It was really about resistance to desegregation
yeah,
and among specifically political white evangelical Christians in power. Just so we're not repeating mythology, because I think that's something we also have to talk about is how do we not reinforce Christianity as the source of the anti-abortion movement, right? It's like we want to be particular in our language too when we talk about what we're up against. That's not against Christian people,
of
right?
course.
It's about this white Christian nationalist ideology that is
Yeah,
very, I would say, anti-Christian.
absolutely.
Anyway,
I can't speak to I can't speak from like a Christian perspective, but I 1,000% agree with everything that you're saying. And then the other point I'll make on it is opposition to the question is opposition to abortion mostly by Christian Americans. I would argue that opposition to abortion is perpetuated in some way by everyone, through these sort of deeply embedded stigmatizing narratives that are unfortunately reinforced time and time again. And also, it isn't like one more thing actually that I want to say is something that we're seeing a lot right now, that is very much in conjunction with the like radicalized, like the manosphere, like the radicalization of young men online, is the idea that women having options or rights of any kind is just bad for men. It is, and this is not really a religiously based argument. This is an argument that is based in like this manosphere ideology and is like very popular amongst like Gen Z men on like TikTok. Is the idea that like what they want is to have like a wife who is the kind of wife that their mom was essentially, and who just does like all the domestic labor, and that feminism and abortion access in turn is like a threat to them living the life that they want. So that's like another sort of very rising piece of this anti-abortion extremist ideology, is these like Gen Z men who are being radicalized on TikTok in a way that I would say is totally outside of like religious ideology of any religion.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's scary, huh?
So scary. So scary. I'm just reading the chat.
And we should maybe take one more question and then wrap things up. Someone
Um,
about the statement that says every child deserves to be wanted and welcomed. I don't know if you want to respond to that one.
I mean, I actually think that's true. I don't I don't think that it is abortion negative to suggest that like if that you should only have a baby if you really want to. I think that's actually very abortion positive.
Absolutely, I agree. There's a question. Yes, the webinar has been recorded. We will be sending out a recording and Sophie's slide deck as well. Sophie, is
Yeah.
there anything that you want to just share in closing before we wrap up?
What I would love to share in closing is I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining us today. I am so grateful for your time on your Tuesday. Please follow us on Instagram. Please join our mailing list at abortionpositivity.com and be engaged with our future work. If you are a member of a congregation or a different organization or a chapter of this organization that would like to do a training for your membership, I would be absolutely honored. And they are, as you know, because you are here, totally free. So please do reach out. My email is sophie@abortionpositivity.com. And also our website has a contact form. And thank you, Melanie, for just putting it in the chat. And I'm just so grateful. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophie. And we'll make sure in our follow-up email with the recording link to include your socials and ways for folks to get in touch with you. And I just want to echo the thanks, Sophie. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. I'm sorry about the technical glitches, but I think it was a fabulous training. So honored to do it with you. And thank you everybody for being here. Just stay tuned. We do have some other trainings planned for the fall. You'll be hearing about those in the next couple of months. Make sure you're following us, RC Our Choice on socials as well to keep up with all the fun and amazing things that we're doing. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.